was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He'd duck and cover, duck and cover.
He did what we all must learn to do. You
and you
and you
and you, duck and cover.
Since the 1950s, school children in the United States have been taught how to duck and cover. Why? Well, to protect themselves from a nuclear attack. The Duck and Cover campaign is just one of the features of life in the atomic age, or the period of history following the detonation of the first nuclear weapon in 1945. The atomic age has shaped everything from global politics to pop culture. But how did we get here? Let's begin with our essential question for this unit. How does one fight a Cold War? Our less than essential question is, how did the atomic bomb change the world? And here are our three guiding questions. How and why was the atomic bomb used by the United States in World War II? What was the response to the United States' use of the atomic bomb in Japan? And what is the relationship between the Cold War and the development of the atomic bomb? But first, a quick content warning. Some of the content in this lesson might be disturbing for some. Our goal is not to sensationalize or glorify these events, but to present an accurate depiction of US history. Alright, let's get started. Initially, the development of the atomic bomb was sparked by fears that Germany was developing its own nuclear weapons. Then, Germany surrendered. But the development of the atomic bomb continued. Why? Supporters argued it could actually save lives by quickly ending the war and preventing a large-scale invasion of Japan. However, critics cautioned that the consequences could be beyond what anyone expected. Following the development and successful testing of the atomic bomb, US President Harry Truman had to decide whether or not to actually use it. Ultimately, he decided that the pros outweighed the cons and authorized the bombing. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. The impact was catastrophic. At least 80,000 people were killed, and much of the city was obliterated. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, killing at least 40,000 people, with a similarly devastating impact on the city. The immediate aftermath saw horrendous physical destruction. The health effects were equally horrifying. Burns, radiation sickness, or an acute illness caused by exposure to radiation emitted by the atomic bombs, and other related illnesses like cancer raised the death toll. Though the bombings led to Japan's surrender, some historians argue that other means could have been used to end the war, sparing hundreds of thousands of civilian casualties. Ultimately, whether or not the use of the atomic bomb was the right decision remains hotly debated. Pause here to respond to the first guiding question in your PDF. In Japan, the immediate reaction was one of shock, anger, and disbelief, particularly given the disproportionate impact on civilians. Themes of destruction and the ethics of war began appearing in Japanese pop culture. One such example is Godzilla, an ancient monster reawakened by nuclear radiation. Within the US, the public was divided. While many Americans celebrated the end of the war, Others question the morality of using such a devastating weapon. Some who had contributed to the atomic bomb's development, like physicists Albert Einstein and J. Robert Oppenheimer, later expressed deep regret about the weapon's devastating human impact. Internationally, the bombings received both praise and criticism. While some Allied nations, like the United Kingdom, were supportive, there were widespread concerns about the future of nuclear technologies. It was only a matter of time before other nations sought to develop their own nuclear weapons. Consequently, there were calls for international organizations to regulate nuclear proliferation or the spread of nuclear weapons and the associated materials and technologies. In 1957, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, was formed to promote and oversee the peaceful use of nuclear technologies. The IAEA walked a fine line. On one hand, member nations that already possessed nuclear technologies, like the United States, wanted to avoid accusations of hypocrisy by preventing other nations from developing nuclear technologies. On the other hand, they wanted to minimize nuclear proliferation while supporting the development of peaceful nuclear technologies, especially energy production.
Yes, the atom is on its way to brighten our towns and to help manufacture our most dependable and indispensable household servant, electric power. Electricity that illuminates our lives, frees us from drudgery, and brings us in contact with all the world through radio, telephone, and television can now be produced from the energy within the atom. And to some of us at least, this is surprising news.
The international community still struggles to navigate this difficult balance today. Pause here to respond to the second guiding question in your PDF. As you previously learned, the United States and Soviet Union had been allies during World War II, but after the war, they no longer had a common enemy to unite them. The pre-existing tensions between them escalated, culminating in the Cold War, an ideological, political, and technological rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union that spanned most of the second half of the 20th century. But wait, what is a Cold War? Well, a hot war is what we traditionally think of when we think of war, things like military conflicts and invasions. But a Cold War is a war without direct military confrontation. But why a Cold War? Why didn't the Soviet Union and the United States just fight one another? To answer that, it's important to understand one of the most terrifying features of the atomic age: the nuclear arms race, or the competition between the United States and Soviet Union to develop the most sophisticated and powerful stockpile of nuclear weapons. Their goal was to establish themselves as the ultimate global superpower. In this context, a superpower refers to a nation whose supreme power and influence allow it to dominate global politics. The nuclear arms race created anxieties about mutually assured destruction, or the idea that if the US or USSR were to launch a nuclear attack, the other would respond with its own nuclear attack, resulting in the destruction of both superpowers, if not the entire world. In other words, a hot war between the United States and Soviet Union could potentially lead to the annihilation of humanity. If that sounds like an exaggeration, well, it wasn't. Remember the destruction caused by just 2 bombs in Japan? By 1975, the Soviet Union and United States had a combined 47,000 nuclear weapons, many of which were far more powerful than the bombs used in Japan. So rather than fight a hot war, the United States, Soviet Union, and the rest of the world spent decades living under the threat of nuclear war, hence the duck and cover campaign. Pause here to respond to the final guiding question in your PDF. We will never know for sure whether the decision to use the atomic bomb to force Japan's surrender was the right decision. What we do know is that the use of the atomic bomb by the United States in World War II set off a chain of events that continue to shape global politics, ethics, and technology today. Until next time, keep making history.
Hey, hey.